I'm pleased to introduce the moderator of this morning's session, Dr. Bertalan Meskó. Described by Forbes Magazine as the geek who is changing the world, Dr. Meskó is the managing director and founder of Webicina.com, the first service to curate medical and health-related social media resources free of charge for patients and medical professionals. In his quest to be ahead of innovation, Dr. Meskó has spent 3 years examining practical concepts that medical professionals can understand immediately and use in their practice. These are outlined in his upcoming book, The Guide to the Future of Medicine. For his research, he interviewed 100 medical experts to predict the top 30 trends that will influence medicine in the years to come. Dr. Bertalan Meskó kicks off the meeting with an invigorating discussion focusing on ways that new technology, such as genomics and next-generation sequencing, are providing pathologists and medical laboratory professionals with valuable tools to improve patient care. Please welcome Dr. Bertalan Meskó.
Good morning. Well, I had a very simple request from the organizers. I was asked to describe to you the future of medicine, genomics, and pathology, to tell you some suggestions about how to prepare for that new word, to be challenging but not too shocking after breakfast. So, game on. But I have a confession to make. From the age of 6, I knew that I wanted to become a doctor and then devote my life to genetics. And I went through that, but at some point I had to realize that I'm also a geek. I love technologies. And as there was no profession to use all my 3 selves, I had to design my own profession. That's how I became a medical futurist. Although I'm a geek, I wasn't born into technology. Rather, I grew up with that, seeing the advances of technologies throughout the years. I remember the first time when I went online. I remember my first hard drive. It had 40 megabytes. That was such a huge space back then. And now we all know that 1024 megabytes equal 1 gigabyte, and then 1 terabyte, and peta, and exa, and now zeta. This is the internet. Today, the internet has about 1.5 zettabytes of information. This is we all should be able to deal with in our own professions. That's now almost humanly impossible. And that's why people usually tell me that, well, technology can be a bit bad. It makes us digital innates. This photo was taken at the last Pope election, everyone having a smartphone, digital camera, tablet. You know, that's how we live our digital lives now. And this is the reason why usually people say that technology made us antisocial. It made us not to talk with each other anymore. You go to a bus or underground station and you see this picture, everyone checking the smartphones. That's now our small life. But I do believe that it's not technology that made us antisocial, because we used to behave the same way before, but for different purposes. I think it's not technology, but the way technology introduced us to even more information. And now nobody, again, nobody can deal with that information overload. Although we should become real masters of filtering online. That now should be a skill. But again, nobody is prepared for that, because nobody prepared us for that. In medical school and all these years, nobody could predict that kind of revolution in technologies happening in just a few years' time. And the reason why it is really hard to predict the future. In the 18th century, French painters were asked to depict the future, what the future would look like by the year 2000, so by nowadays. And they thought that we could video telephone by now, Skype, they got it quite right. They thought that we would have microbiology by now, even though for some reasons they add the poisonous gas to the shadows and not the actual bacteria, but they had a good idea about this. And my favorite one, they thought education would work like this. We could put books into a machine, use the machine, and all the knowledge through the wires would go into the minds of students. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Moreover, in medicine, in a radio magazine published in 1925, they predicted that by the 1970s, we would have such a practice worldwide. The doctors could treat and diagnose patients from their offices by the patient is at home through radio wave machines. And why we have telemedicine now, but we are not at this point, and hopefully it's going to take some time to get here, if ever. As you can see, predict the future is really complicated. To do it in medicine, it's almost a mission impossible. And you cannot give me a better challenge than this. And this is why I think it's time to get to a real conclusion about how technology can help healthcare. Over the last decade, while working as a medical futurist, I learned two certain things. The first is that technology will not give solutions for the problems healthcare faces globally today. That's for sure. The second certain thing I learned is that the human touch alone, the patient-doctor interaction alone is not enough anymore. So we have to find a balance between using both. Using disruptive technologies, but keeping the human touch at the same time in the practice of medicine. And I think it's possible. Let me show you some real-life examples about not how technology will evolve in the next few years, but how it has been changing medicine and healthcare globally through some very practical examples. First, let's predict diseases. I've had 3 genomic tests with direct-to-consumer genomic companies. They send me this sampling tube, you know it well. You have to provide a few milliliters of saliva sample. You cannot eat, drink, use chewing gum before the sampling. And then you have to provide 5 milliliters. It takes 40 minutes. Try it once, it's a real struggle. But then you send it back and they send you the results after a few weeks. And as a geneticist, I wanted to talk with their genetic counselor. And of course, it was set up and I had a call with them. And they told me that, well, I had an elevated risk for diabetes. So I can do 4 things: have a healthy diet, do exercises, don't smoke, little alcohol. They told me about my risk for lung cancer. I can do 4 things: have a healthy diet, exercise, don't smoke, little alcohol. They talked about 6 conditions. They told me about the 4 exact same suggestions. So the service should improve by now, by time, but right now it couldn't really change the way I live my life. Moreover, with the decline of genomic sequencing, the cost of genomic sequencing, we saw when one genome sequencing cost $3 billion, now it's about 1,500 about. But I believe that eventually in a few years' time, the shipping cost of the sample will be more expensive than the actual sequencing cost. And what now? I have my own genome sequencing data at home in a huge text file. I cannot do anything with that. It won't help me make better medical decisions or live my life in a different way. So we will have the data much sooner than we can actually use that in medical decision making. According to the Personalized Medicine Coalition, right now there are only about 150 examples when actual genomic data with evidence in the background can use in the practice of medicine. 150. We expected much more, many more years ago when the human genome sequencing project was completed. Although during my PhD I told my professors, but what if after some time patients start sequencing genes at home? Because why not? And they laughed. Well, a company based in Oxford came up with this, the MinION device, last year. It's not really ready, it's not really great, it has some critics, but with very short DNA fragments can now be sequenced with this small device by using a laptop. It's not at home yet, but very soon again, anyone and everyone will have their genome sequences, although we don't know yet what we will do with them, with those data from now, from the first day in practice of medicine. But let's see how we can measure now parameters that we could only measure in the ivory tower of medicine so far. This 2-micron thick digital tattoo came out in Japan this year. It can measure more than 20 health parameters, then it gets washed out, and for a few dollars you can get a new one. Now it became really simple to measure these parameters at home. In my own life, I use the Withings Pulse, a French device, that measures my activities, plus it measures my sleep quality at night. So I know exactly how many hours I need to be really energized, based on which I tell my smartwatch that wake me up between 6 and 6:20, and at the best potential time, when I'm not in deep sleep anymore, it wakes me up. Not with sound, but with gentle vibration, because you wake up in a much simpler way. It could change my life. I still sleep less than 7.5 hours, but I'm quite energized from 1 second, because I sleep well, plus I can wake up quite easily. Once a week, I measure my blood pressure with the world's simplest blood pressure monitor, and it has no wires or pumps. It has one button to start. I put it on my arm, I check my emails, it measures my blood pressure in a clinically validated format. It sends the data to my smartphone. A few days ago, I went to my GP and he said, let's measure my blood pressure. And I said, well, here's my phone, here's my last 30 measurements from the last 3 months. So don't spend time with that. Here is the data, just use it, please. And then I have a live core. I can do an ECG, a one-channel ECG anytime. I can use it with my smartphone by Bluetooth. It measures my one-channel ECG. It stores the data in a digitally secure format. I can send it to my doctor in a PDF format. The same device was that exactly 1 year ago, working only with iPhones. Now it's universal. They're getting cheaper, smaller, and more efficient in the practice of medicine. For me, it's very important to be cognitively really energized. So every day I spend 5 minutes on lumosity.com to improve my cognitive skills, my flexibility, memory, problem solving. 5 minutes time a day playing games, and I feel much better. I could improve my memory for many aspects, so it helped me do that. And one more thing, it's really important for me that when I want to focus, I should be able to focus in the best potential way. So I listen to music on a free service called Focus at Will that only shows you music that generates the best potential focused brainwaves. There is a group of neuroscientists behind the startup, and it's a great way to focus when you really want to focus. So now we can measure almost anything at home with these devices that anyone can order online. What about diagnosis? Now nurses can wear the augmented reality glass called Divina, through which they can actually see the arteries and veins below the skin. So not based on empirical data, but they can base a decision from where to draw the blood on actually what they see on the patient. And this concept of augmented reality, to see more by wearing your glass from the internet or by Google Glass, you can actually take pictures, record videos from your own perspectives. And I have a surgeon friend in the US called Rafa Grossman in Maine, and he told me that before, medical students try to pick off his shoulder to see what he's doing during an operation, but now he can actually stream the operation live in high quality to thousands of students, so they can learn more. And I asked him to create a video about the evolution of mobile health a few years ago, and he made a video about this, how the doctor's job changed from using laptops and smaller tablets and smartphones to the actual Google Glass. So now when the patient comes in, he says hi. Many years ago, he turned to the computer, then he turned to the iPad, and now he turns to the patient. He still can look into the patient's eye while inputting data. That's how augmented reality can help us in our work. And one more thing, in the far future, what if nanorobots live in our bloodstream that can actually measure any health parameters? They alert us if there's a disease to be developed in our body, and then if you have a heart attack, they could call the ambulance or release oxygen until the ambulance arrives. The opportunities are endless, also for bioterrorism. Just imagine what kind of threats this could pose to society just by using such devices in the future. And believe me, we will get to the point when we can use these in 30, 40, 50 years time from now on. What about treatment and creating new things? Now we can 3D print things out. And this is the customized prosthetics printed out with a 3D printer because the man wanted to play football as he played before losing his leg, and he wanted to look like a football player, so he got a customized prosthetics printed out. But moving forward, what if we can print out biomaterials, and that's not science fiction anymore? Last and this year, scientists printed out bladder, kidney, and liver tissues that were functioning. So we might not be far away from printing out actual human organs. The simplest ones first, skin, maybe the heart, in a few years' time. But let me be more science fiction-like here. What if we can print out drugs? A Scottish group led by Professor Lee Cronin has been working on that concept to be able to print out actual drugs. Because now I go to the doctor, I get a prescription, I go to the pharmacy, and I get my drug that was manufactured by a pharma company. But I want to get personalized drugs for my own genomic background, with my own lifestyle decisions. So I go to the doctor, I get a blueprint model. I take the blueprint to the pharmacy, where they print it out in 3D from the ingredients in the pharmacy. This concept only has the potential to change a whole industry regarding pharma companies. In treatment, now this is the most sophisticated surgical robot, Da Vinci robot. There are 1,000 of them worldwide. And I had a chance to use one of these at NASA last year. And they just told me that, sit down and start using that. It's really intuitive. If you have some video gaming skills, it's really intuitive. So at certain universities, such as the University of Washington, they started teaching that kind of skills that are more related to video games rather than the actual surgeon hand skills. And now these robots are becoming so precise that an intermediate robot will be needed between the surgical robot and the actual surgeon, not to translate the human hand's physiological vibrations into the surgical robot laser precise movements. And robotics has been exponentially growing in the last few years. This is Pac-Man, developed by Boston Dynamics, a company that was acquired by Google a few months ago for a reason. Well, if something like that started marching towards me in real life, I would get a bit scared. But as you can see, they are becoming more and more human-like, more and more android. And these will be used in emergency situations, plus moving patients around clinics, mostly in elderly care, in just a few years' time. This is InTouch Health device, which is used when there is a doctor shortage and the doctor's eyes and expertise are still needed. So then it can move around quite fast in the clinic. You can see the doctor's face, you can talk with the doctor. Well, at this point, usually my professors tell me that, but the handshake is still missing. And then I tell them, at the end of this year, a new glove, a force feedback glove is coming to the market. So when I wear the glove and I touch something, someone else wearing the same glove can feel what I'm feeling. So even the handshake is coming to these devices, not in decades time, but in months time. This is the intelligent surgical knife, which, while cutting the tissue, can tell, based on the vaporized tissue by using spectroscopy, whether that tissue was cancerous or not. So instead of sending the sample to the actual pathology lab, they can tell you exactly with real live information whether that specific tissue was cancerous or not. It is coming to the market early next year. Regarding augmentation, what if we not just level up to the healthy state, but we augment human features and capabilities? This is an exoskeleton, and last year I had a chance to watch an amazing presentation from Amanda Boxtel, who told her story about being paralyzed from the waist down. She had a ski accident many years ago, and she didn't want to give up her dreams. Therefore, she went on searching for a company that can help her walk again. And this is Exobionics, and she had a chance to learn to walk again. She's still paralyzed from the waist down, but with this exoskeleton, during the presentation, she stood up and walked. It's now not science fiction anymore. There are 3,000 patients learning how to walk again with these exoskeletons. The robotic prosthetics become so state-of-the-art, so sophisticated that now we have to face ethical challenges. Last year in the UK, a teenager wanted to replace his absolutely healthy right arm for such a prosthetic device because it can rotate the wrist without any limitations. So then he tried to find a sponsor, and he found actually a sponsor who wanted to pay for the procedure, and then he was ready to wear the sponsor's logos on his robotic hand for his entire life. And fortunately, a bioethicist didn't let it happen. So we have to face such ethical challenges just because technology is becoming so sophisticated that it can even replace healthy human tissue and healthy human limbs. What if we have to learn again how to think? I think the most acclaimed professor in the world can keep 50, 60 studies in mind. That's almost autism, by the way. But there are 23 million papers in PubMed, and there are more and more. So we have to deal with this huge amount of information. And the IBM supercomputer named Watson does exactly that. It checks the patient's medical records, it checks the global medical literature through textbooks and all the medical papers out there, and then comes up with suggestions, and the doctor makes a final call. It has been tested at US clinics for 2 years now, and the MD Anderson Cancer Center is using that in practice. In many cases, professors ask me, what about responsibility here? And then I ask back, if you use your stethoscope and you hear something, you make a decision based on that, and that was a bad decision, was that your mistake or the stethoscope mistake? Of course yours. This is just a device, a tool in our hand in decision making, nothing more and nothing less. At the New York Genome Center, they have been using Watson for 1 year for mining genomic data related to brain cancer, because the data are so complicated that they need a special computing power behind that, and Watson has been helping them in this. But it is not just about medical information. I think all of us deserve the right to get access to the best information out there, not just in the medical literature, but anywhere, even in social media. So on webicina.com, we came up with this pathology social media report, an absolutely free report that anyone can access about which are the best blogs, medical journals, Facebook groups, Twitter channels, YouTube channels, all the dynamic resources out there created for pathology and also in more than 100 conditions and specialties, and how to be prepared for getting access to all these. Now everyone should have the right to get access to such information. Moreover, I think we have to train medical students nowadays to be prepared for this very digital world. And at Semmelweis Medical School, I've been teaching medical students for 6 years. And at Stanford, I give master courses for teachers there, how to prepare their own students at their own universities. But I realized that many physicians from the UK, from Spain, from Germany wanted to travel to Hungary during my semester to attend a course. I realized an online course is needed. This is the social media course, a free course for everyone, containing 16 presentations about the basics of internet, how to use blogs, how to use RSS, how to be up to date, all these details with presentations and handouts and tests. After each successful test, you get a badge, and at the end, you can get the ultimate expert badge and a certification. Now there are about 5,000 physicians and students doing the course, and only about 300 of them could get the certification, but there is a reason for that. There are some tests I failed at, even though I came up with the questions myself. So it's really challenging. Please try to go through all the questions and all the tests here. The last thing, we really have to prepare students now and physicians now for this new world, to be digitally savvy, to have digital literacy, so they can be a guide for their patients online, plus they can be up to date really easily. That's now our responsibility as educators to prepare them for this new kind of world. How about research? This was the first microchip presented last year that can mimic the physiology of the human lung almost perfectly. And now they're working on the liver, kidney, and heart models. They plan to connect all these up in 2016 to create the first real virtual model of the human physiology. So then we could test thousands of new drug molecules and billions of patient models, comprehensive ones, with supercomputers. I think I would tell my children that when I became a doctor in 2009, we tested drugs on patients. We gave drugs to some of them, and we gave placebo to some others, and we tried to find a difference. That was such a barbaric era in the 2000 years. But now in the future, we could test these drugs immediately live. Now we have a chance to connect with each other. I think what I felt myself as a last year medical student back then, when I asked my professors about a different complicated issue, I didn't get real help, so I felt alone, professionally alone, and it was an absolutely awful feeling. But now we can connect up. On figure 1, we can share pathology images, tissues, and we can discuss these. There are thousands of such communities out there in social media, but now no one has to feel alone professionally because we have these great networks. That's my digital brain, the social media networks I've been building around myself for years. And the last thing, a very simple thing, what if we can eat in a different way? Are you sure you know what you had for breakfast? You sure you know all the ingredients? Well, at the end of this year, this device called TelSpec will come to the market that by using spectroscopy will tell us exactly what we are eating, how many calories, allergens, toxins, what ingredients can be found in that specific food. And if we know that, are you sure you know how to eat properly? Let me tell you my own experience. That's one of my most extreme examples. This is a smart fork. It's designed by a French company, and it was designed based on a study saying that with the same appetite, if you eat in a more slowly way, you eat less. So what it does, you start eating with that, it's a light and it vibrates. I once had a dinner with that. It was very frustrating. You get the first fork serving, and then a second, it vibrates, not yet, not yet, not yet. Then the second one. It's amazingly frustrating to learn how improperly I have been eating for decades. I don't have much time, so I have to eat very fast, and it teaches me or tries to teach me how to eat properly. So we have things to learn from now on. And again, as a whole, how society will change in the future. Just imagine that now, instead of financial differences, there will be biological ones between people. Just because some people can afford to buy these devices and use technologies on their bodies, by this become faster, jump higher, be smarter. That's going to create a huge difference biologically between us very soon. We have to deal with this right now on a public level. The first Cyborg Olympic Games, called Cyberthlon, will take place in Zurich, Switzerland in 2016, and no healthy people will be allowed to compete. The first Robotic Olympic Games will take place in Japan in 2020, where no people will be allowed to compete. So we are facing serious issues, ethically, threats, advantages. We have to start discussing this from now on. And then the last invention of human mankind, the digital brain, then we understand how the brain works and we just download ourselves and live forever, leaving this biological waste we call the human body behind, full of diseases and symptoms. But I hope it's far, far away in the future. And again, I think my digital brain is already there through my social media networks. So that's where we are. In many cases, I'm told that either we use technologies in medicine, thus lose the human touch, or vice versa. My theory is that it's possible to keep both. It's possible to use disruptive technologies, but to keep the human interaction in medicine, the real essence of practicing medicine. But for this, we have to destroy something, and that's the ivory tower. We don't have to actively destroy that because it has been being destroyed for many years now. But now medical information, scientific information, devices are accessible and are getting accessible to anyone with an internet connection. Anyone can order an ECG device, a blood pressure, saturation device, whatever. Now people get access to that, and that's great. Because that can lead us to my vision about the future. As you can see, there is no pyramid here, there is no hierarchy. The patient is the king. The patient is in the center, a patient who can access any information, any devices about their own health, a patient with health management who takes care of their own health, and then in a partnership with their caregivers, the hospitals, decision makers, together in this partnership, it can lead to the best potential healthcare. But I think you all agree with me that we are not going into that direction right now. Not just here, nowhere in the world. That's why I thought that a guide is definitely needed. Now the new country we are going to is the future of medicine, and we do need a tourist guide to prepare us about what to expect from that, what to be afraid of, what to discuss from now on. So I came up with this book that was released a few weeks ago, The Guide to the Future of Medicine, to present that kind of list of suggestions to you. Well, here is the guide. The first point is the most important one. If you don't know today's trends, you have no chance for predicting the future in your own professions. I believe that being up to date should be a master skill for all of us. A master skill. Just like you, every single day I face an ocean of information. I cannot deal with that. But I use a few simple tricks. I use RSS and a few trackers, automatic solutions, through which I can fill up a swimming pool out of that ocean. That's still too much. I don't have that much time every day to read all this. That's why I have a glass. And this glass for me is my social media networks, which I've been building for many years. I've been following experts in my own areas, like-minded people, professors, students, medical lawyers, expert patients, globally. And based on my social media network, I have to only drink this glass every day, but this glass was meant for me. It's like having 500,000 assistants working for you specifically. It's a great feeling. Just like how I work for them. It's a two-way process. But by this crowdsourcing, I can make sure I am perfectly up to date. And I can be quite self-confident about that. In my two fields, the future of medicine, digital health, I am perfectly up to date because that should be a master skill for all of us. Second point I think is very simple. Based on my examples, you can see that we should embrace digital at some point, but we should avoid hype. Hype has never been useful in medicine and healthcare. We don't want to use such Google augmented reality glasses. We don't want to use huge devices on our body and big smartwatches on our whole arm and such very special ideas. We shouldn't get to this point when technology is being overhyped and it changes medicine the way we don't want to change it. But we should just embrace it. The third point is very social. Please start discussing these issues. Start asking questions, communicate, crowdsource information in your family, in your profession, in whatever groups you are in. Please start discussing these things because no one has a solution for the problems and threats I showed to you today. No one. We have to start finding the solutions ourselves. Just a little help. Never in the history of the entertainment industry, we've had so many examples, books, movies, TV series discussing these issues. There are some better examples, there are some less better examples, but still, we get help from them. If you use the Medical Future hashtag on Twitter, please join the discussion, the global discussion about these things, and ask questions and just join it to be able together to find solutions for these problems. Then the fourth point. It's a bit negative. There is no ultimate solution anymore. In the past, there's always been one direction, one technology, one trend, one philosophy that showed us to the future of medicine, but now it's different. The future will be more about like what the internet looks like today. This is the official map of the internet, 1 billion websites connected to each other, even in different languages, different topics, but they are interconnected. The future will be more about such an interconnected network of solutions, services, experts, devices, information. And that's the kind of approach we should acquire from now on. My fifth point is very positive. If you now struggle with IT, please don't give up. Your time is just coming. The way children today use touchscreen devices, smartphones and tablets, the way how intuitively they can learn these things very easily, the same devices will come to us, to our professions, in some years. In the movie Minority Report, Tom Cruise could use these gloves moving around data so intuitively. And if you think that's science fiction, I blogged 1 week ago about this computer table that can be used the same way. We can move around data without learning how to use operating systems and installing things and devices. Just use them intuitively. So if you struggle with that, please hold on, your time is coming. The sixth point is, it's a bit challenge. It's a challenge for decision makers. Now they should live up to the expectations. We can be innovative, patients, professionals, but decision makers have the responsibility now. There's a good example. My Dutch mentor, Lucien and Helen, got a new position in the Dutch government, and it's called the Chief Imagineer Officer. From engineer and imaginer, his job is to envision the future and prepare people in the Dutch healthcare system for what's coming next. That's a jackpot position. And then we get to my last point. I think you should be ready to make your own assumptions about the future. Don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to philosophies and technologies and trends. You should be able to make your own decisions about which technologies and trends and concepts to implement in your own practices. The future will be so customized that we must have such skills. It means we have to acquire the knowledge. That's why we have to be up to date. Plus, we have to acquire those skills that let us make our own assumptions about the future. I think that a huge wave of technological change is coming towards us, and if this wave hit us unprepared, as we are now, without exceptions, it's going to make medicine like a service that is based purely on business without any kind of human interactions. And I think we shouldn't let it happen. It only depends on us. If we start preparing for that, we can get to an era when we don't need such a guide anymore. We can get to an era when we can use disruptive, amazing technologies, but keep the human touch in medicine, the way to create a healthcare that is cost-effective, efficient, and just really great. So please start preparing now. Thank you for your attention.
So we have a few minutes actually for a question and answer session to pick Dr. Meskó's brain about his visions of the future. I have a question for you. Well, first of all, the comment. My comment is, I feel really old right now. My question has to do with your...
Sorry, if it helps me too, just in case.
My question has to do with your discussion about educating students on using social media. And my naive perspective is that kids pretty much emerge from the womb now understanding how to do that. And how are you going to reach the folks who are, say, on the far side of that generation gap in terms of understanding and using and embracing social media? I mean, I don't Twitter or tweet. I don't know how to do that. I don't understand. I don't get social media. It doesn't strike a chord with me. I don't understand it. So how do you reach people like me who just don't really know how to use it or want to use it?
Thank you for the question. In my experience, there is no generation gap. I've been teaching thousands of medical students at the age of 18 and 20-something, and they use all these social media channels for personal purposes. I've been teaching hundreds of professionals, even professors, about how to be better at digital at the age of 50, 60, and beyond. And they would love to use these when I show them my practical examples, but they find it hard to use the technology itself. So for me, to transform the minds of the young students about how to use them for professional purposes, or to teach the older generation how to use technology itself, same struggle. Therefore, I think it only depends on the approach. If you want to learn, you will learn. By Twitter, if I can try to encourage you to use that, just one thing, every single day I feel that I have at least 100,000 experts in my areas who I can turn to. If I have a question about scientific advancement, technology, a medical, clinical question, or touristic question, whatever, I can turn to 100,000 people who, many of them I know in person, many of them I've been in professional contact for years, but I have this kind of amazing opportunity to reach them in a very specific channel. So that's what Twitter is for, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But reaching people is it's a real struggle. I know that my medical students are on Facebook without exceptions. For the 4th semester in a consecutive way, they have all been on Facebook. So having the motto that if you want to teach me, you first have to reach me, I went on Facebook to create a Facebook page for them. So during the course, every single day, I ask questions about the topics we cover in the lectures, and they can fight for bonus points. And at the end, who wins the competition, based on the Facebook page points, they can skip the exam. Although, to be honest with you, I still have to offer them chocolates. That's the best way. I have the online course, Facebook page, all these challenges to let them skip the exam. If I offer them chocolates, they fight against each other.
Some incentives are eternal, I guess.
Exactly.
So, thank you for that answer. I will do my best to start tweeting. So now I think we'll open up the question and answer session to the audience. I'm sure there must be some questions for Dr. Meskó. We have a hand over here.
There's one.
So my question is, regarding our model with the patient in the center and all the decision makers and such around and focusing toward the, the patient, with all of the technology we have right now, we actually have a lot of people on the internet who will create sort of like fake websites for fake information as sort of just a way, to get their jollies, I suppose. Is there something that we can do, or...
I get it.
I guess, yeah, my question is, how do we separate, for patients, they think that they're helping themselves by looking at all these websites. How can we help them to distinguish what's true and what's not?
Thank you so much for the question. On Webicina, we screened about 1 million medical websites in the world, and at least 80% contained false, misleading, or awful information. There was a psychiatrist who offered teleconsultation plus hypnosis through Skype, and he said he could cure anything from cancer to any diseases. So it's really awful what we see on the internet quality-wise. That's why I believe that now it's part of the job of medical professionals to be guides for their patients online. That's called Apple mediation. There was a paper about that a few years ago, which means that I should have skills in digital literacy to make sure when the patient comes in and he says or she says, I found this website about my condition. In my experience, many of my colleagues start saying that, please don't go on the internet, but listen to me. But I think that's the wrong approach. They should tell that, and I use this approach in my own way when I discuss it with patients, that where did you find the information? And the patient told me that he doesn't know, but there's a web link on the printed page. I checked the website myself. I said there's no contact information, description, privacy policy, medical disclaimer, nothing. That's an awful website. But please check these 2 websites I know by heart, managed by expert patients and medical professionals. And when you have questions after reading these, then come back to me and discuss these. Making patients or transforming patients into e-patients, there are studies for that, can save professionals time, effort. It's easier to work with them. They have more specific questions. They are just better partners in the treatment because they are motivated to do so. So instead of just waiting, expecting the internet to become quality-wise perfect, that's mission impossible, we should be the guides for the patients, just like how they also become guides for us in the digital world. And I think the approach of being the doctor on the top and the patient like a small element should change into an equal partnership when we learn from each other. With the professional's expertise and the patient's expertise about their own health, together we can make decisions. I can teach the patient what to look for regarding information online, and the patient can teach me about the online communities they are part of. The e-patient movement has been skyrocketing in the US, and the best examples are coming from here. So with this knowledge, in this equal partnership, with this guide, being a guide for the patient, I think that's the jackpot solution for this problem.
More questions?
I'm totally enthusiastic about your idea of engaging patients in their own healthcare. And obviously IT is another form of literacy. And I think it's particularly with the less educated patients, it's harder to get them engaged in managing their chronic diseases like diabetes. And there's a kind of style, they might feel uncomfortable on a lot of these websites. So my question is, less educated people, how to engage them with IT and get them to own their own healthcare?
It's a very good question. Based on my experience with e-patients, like e-patient Dave DeBronkart, who is the leader of this whole movement called the participatory healthcare, they always tell me that they didn't have to be motivated or engaged to start using IT tools because they had the motivation to find a solution for their problems. So they started using online communities and very simple devices just to have a better life, a more healthy lifestyle, and a better disease management. And then they had to educate their own doctors about how to be partners in that. So these e-patients tell me that when they go to an online community such as Smart Patients or D-Life in Diabetes, even though they love their own medical professionals, but there are things that the doctor cannot understand unless they have the disease. So they have to turn to the online communities, and there are great ones. At this point, if the patient does a search for such a condition, they will find tens of thousands of such online communities, and again, 80% of those will be awful. That's the point when the medical professional could come in saying that in diabetes, I know these 2-3 community sites, which are great, managed by experts, and you should ask some specific questions there and then discuss the results with me. And in this, again, this partnership, we can get you to have the best potential life out there. And I can show you examples how diabetic patients like Carrie Morone from the blog called 6untilme.com, how she managed to have a much better disease management just by being part of these quality online communities and by finding a doctor who was a partner in this whole communication. So again, the partnership starts with that, being a guide for each other in this.
Question right here. Oops.
Hello, there we go. Hi, Mark Tuthill, and I'm a pathology informaticist from Detroit, Michigan, and so I'm just fascinated by what you're speaking about. One of the things I think that's really interesting, particularly when we talk about laboratory testing and laboratory testing becoming decentralized, is the challenge to keeping that information integrated into the patient's chart. You already described how Watson can consume that information, but no one can consume it if this information is splayed all over the place, lost, mixed up, different results, so forth and so on. Have you thought about that at all and how we might deal with that?
Exactly. The real long-term goal is not that patients can access everything from home, from genome sequences to blood markers, from information to real practical piece of advice, and then they make their own decisions and that's it. The goal is that they have access to these, and then with having access, they discuss everything with the medical professional. And regarding laboratory testing and regarding this home diagnostic revolution that we are seeing right now, a company called Theranos will have a huge impact in this. If you do a search for Theranos with TH, online, they are about to disrupt this part of the healthcare system because they want to give out even the blood markers to the patient being at home, making the whole process very simple and sophisticated. So I should say that, putting on my doctor's cap, that that's not the kind of future we are looking forward to, but putting on my futurist cap, it's quite inevitable. We will see such companies rising and patients ordering these tests, but the same thing that happened with smartphones, that we went through the hype period and now we finally arrived to a meaningful use. I have a professor who saw one time that I had my smartphone opened up and we discussed some cases and I had very good suggestions about that because I could check online right away. The next day he purchased an iPhone and he showed me that he downloaded 100 medical applications. That's great. And I was back, which ones are you using? And he said, none of these, but I have 100 medical applications. So we now went through this high period. We saw the same thing in genetic testing with DTC companies, the FDA shutting down the 23andMe, I think for a reason. So we went through all this hype, and now we are going through the hype in this home diagnostic wearable revolution. Regarding those devices that can measure things at home, and even the fact that we can now order tests from home, and I must have the right to access the information that I want to get access to, whether it's a DNA sequence or a blood marker, although I cannot do anything with having the information alone. That's why it's very important to have that partnership with the doctor. Otherwise, that's going to be, again, a business service without any human interaction. So that's the part when decision makers come to the picture. They should make, and ethicists, they should make sure that the system itself is working as it is supposed to work, but in a way that patients have access to whatever information they want to get access. Medical professionals get access to what they need actually, not what they might need, but based on Watson, they get what they need as information. And again, together after a first personal interaction, but then through digital communication, they can get to the best potential results. I know I'm saying the same things again and again, but the base of this whole change should be the doctor-patient personal interaction. Anything else is great, but that can only be an additional part of the system. So Theranos, we should look out for that company.
All right, well, I think that it's time for us to wrap this up. Thank you all for those excellent questions. And thank you, Dr. Meskó.
Thank you very much.